Join the conversation on short to medium-term actions, policy and procedural reforms, program modalities, lending instruments, tools and methodologies. Design and implement projects that respond to the pandemic, climate risks, and rising income inequality. At the Forum on Successful Project Design and Implementation, we meet roadblocks with building blocks of results, resilience, and recovery to produce quality projects. Join us in navigating toward an inclusive and green recovery. Connect with development practitioners. View the virtual exhibits. Participate in discussions and games. Share your views using the hashtag #SuccessfulProjects. And stay engaged here at successfulprojects.adb.org.
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this year's Forum on Successful Project Design and Implementation. This year's central theme is the 3 R's, namely results, resilience, and recovery. We trust you will find the next 3 days exciting and productive. Let us invite ADB's Vice President for Administration and Corporate Management, Mr. Bruce Gosper, to deliver the welcome remarks. Thank you.
Good morning. To all delegates and project frontliners of ADB developing members, representatives of the development community, colleagues at ADB, and all who have gathered in this virtual forum, welcome. I would have preferred to greet you in person, but the pandemic continues to linger, and with it are challenges not only to each of us as individuals, but also to project operations. Thankfully, we have technology that allows us to connect and meet. Prior to the pandemic, the region had set a course to reduce poverty by at least 50%. This is now somewhat under threat with new variants of the virus emerging and infections continuing. This further complicates an already difficult situation and decelerates the region's progress towards an inclusive and prosperous Asia-Pacific. Only 1 in 4 of the Asian member economies posted GDP growth last year. The economic shocks due to the pandemic are increasing both poverty and income inequality. Responding to the pandemic, ADB has contributed close to $30 billion in assistance through the COVID-19 Pandemic Response Option, or CIPRO financing, and the Asia-Pacific Vaccine Access Facility, or APVAX. In the current scenario, while we cope and adapt, we must also transform as we transition out of the pandemic. We must work collectively towards a stronger and better Asia-Pacific, and this is what this forum attempts to do. As the fight against the pandemic continues, we must keep in mind our broader development goals of poverty reduction and building back better, both centered on resilience and sustainability. Building back better needs to adopt a holistic approach that integrates ecological, social, institutional, and financial aspects of resilience in projects. And it can be done with all project stakeholders contributing towards a prosperous and green recovery. Let me circle back to what I said earlier about being transformative. The pandemic has caused a big dent to state budgets. We need to look for broader and strong collaborative arrangements with other actors in the development arena. We must scale up our engagement with the private sector, civil society, and development partners to help resuscitate the economy and advocate for resilience through policies and projects. Frameworks need to be in place to put this into action, and this forum is a great opportunity to better connect among ourselves and to seek opportunities to leverage resources and expertise in financing, design, and implementation. We need to focus on strong project fundamentals, specifically quality of design and entry. In the current circumstances, how can we simplify processes, minimize contracting delays, and speed up disbursements? With protracted lockdowns and slow vaccination rates, how can we get workers to the project site, ensure their safety, and what is the implication on project costs? Against the backdrop of this crisis, there are windows of opportunity in project design and implementation, a more holistic approach to development, and the opportunity to forge strong partnerships. Of course, we are aware of the challenges faced by project implementation teams in terms of their efforts on implementation quality, project performance, and keeping in check the safety and health of workers and project stakeholders. And all of this amid lockdowns, travel restrictions, and physical distancing. Project readiness is paramount, and financing instruments, including the Project Readiness Financing Modality and the Small Expenditure Financing Facility, are there to be tapped into. The innovative use of technology in procurement, financial management, and project monitoring is increasingly important. It is being used, but there is room to use more. We have not exhausted all the options that technology offers in these areas, much less in other phases of the project cycle. I encourage everyone to use the next 3 days to raise issues, discuss good practices, and exchange lessons learned while keeping the 3 R's at the forefront. Those are results, resilience, and recovery. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the forum.
We started a conversation. How do we rise beyond COVID? More than 1,000 people from 50 countries joined the Forum on Successful Project Design and Implementation. 3 days of questioning our paradigms and rethinking our priorities.
This COVID-19 crisis is really a multidimensional crisis. It started in the health sector, but it has now expanded, and it's a crisis of service delivery and of public sector.
There is a concern that what started as a pandemic and turned into an economic crisis should not become an infrastructure crisis. So here you have hard as well as soft issues to look at.
We've talked about flexibility, we've talked about pragmatism. I think we also have to talk about being realistic. I would also recommend that we pace ourselves a little bit. We also have to make sure we're thinking as we're going and we're not just doing knee-jerk reactions because of the crisis situation.
The crisis is evolving, and we're learning from our emerging lessons and reaffirming that we need to tackle this new normal together.
The crisis offers us opportunities to reaffirm our commitment to support our developing members, improve the quality of life of their populations, and strengthen our unified action.
The challenge is global, but our solutions for project frontliners are local because the pandemic affects countries differently.
Millions of people rely on our collective capacity to deliver services in health, transport, education, agriculture, and other sectors. The backbone of this urgent action is our joint capacity to design and implement impactful development projects.
Impact of COVID hasn't been so much as a health event in the Pacific. In the region, the 14 Pacific countries actually closed their borders very, very early, but it is very much unfolding as a socio-economic disaster in the Pacific.
We go back to the design and implementation of our projects. Their quality and sustainability are the building blocks of our promise to deliver basic services.
Let me stress that planning for implementation begins at project preparation and not after the project has been approved. Sound planning will lead to sound results.
How is the governance arrangement, and can we ensure that all the public funds that are being used for this investment will be appropriately used for the right purposes?
In light of some of these projects where you have potential loan savings, they may be due to projects coming in below cost estimates, bids are coming in lower. We urge you really to look at some of these funds, either reuse them for adding outputs to the project, otherwise do cancel them, because if you cancel them early, it'll minimize the debt burden on your government.
Develop process and procedures to address different aspects of managing and addressing COVID-19 risk as per the relevant contractual clause.
To check the appetite to bid for a DBO in a remote context, the feedback from the market was actually incorporated into the DBO contract.
Out in the field, our priorities are clear. We put people first in the way we adapt, mitigate, and innovate.
These are some photographs taken during our monitoring visit. There is a health screening. It is a continuous process, and all campsite and work site are properly barricaded.
Showing some photographs taken during the initial awareness programs. You can see that all the people were wearing face masks.
The pandemic broadened our use of technology in connecting with each other and doing things more efficiently.
We have had to adopt new tools and processes in the way we do business. Remote financial due diligence is how we've been conducting our work.
We carried out virtual inspections. We had the materials tested and certified by our consultants.
We had been using Android-based tablets to collect information. And when you are using technology already, it's very easy to adopt because we were able to modify the questions. When you change the questions, you can do it from the mainframe and then it can get downloaded onto the surveyors.
We had a drone and the drone automatically flies over your construction project and takes imagery every single day.
It's the same technology that made virtual learning fun and interactive. The 2020 Forum on Successful Project Design and Implementation, rising to the challenge of COVID-19 and beyond for a prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia and the Pacific.
Today, we'd like to continue the conversation we started a year ago, which you saw in the video. There have been so many lessons and insights from project implementation for over a year into the pandemic. Our first session, Maintaining Project Quality, steers our conversations along that context. To facilitate the session is Mr. Rehan Kausar, ADB's Director for Procurement, Portfolio, and Financial Management Department. Over to you, Rehan.